Hope you enjoyed chapters 1 and 2. I'm now going to share with you chapters 3 and 4 of Oranges in No Man's Land. So here's chapter 3. One morning I stepped out of that crowded, overflowing, noisy flat. It must have been early summer, I suppose, because the night had been cool and the day looked as though it would be hot. There had been a ferocious gun battle raging in the streets around us all through the night. There was an invisible line across Beirut in those days. It was known as the Green Line, and it divided the city as surely as a wall, though there was no actual line to be seen, only a vast maze of bombed-out buildings infested with gunmen and a few old people. The different groups controlled the opposite sides, and the battles were fought across it. Back then, I never understood who was who or what was what. I still don't really know. What were they all fighting for? Religion? Politics? Was it the rich against the poor? Sometimes I wonder if the fighters themselves knew what they were doing. That night they'd been hard at it. The whole city had echoed to the crash of exploding bombs and shells and the rattle of machine gun fire. Vehicles had roared through the streets, their tyres squealing, and ambulance sirens had sounded in the distance. It was quiet in the street now. The fighting was over for the time being. The sky should have been a bright blue, but a light fog hung in the air from the dusts of the ruins and the smoke from the burning buildings. There had been so much noise in the night I hadn't slept much, and I was yawning my head off. I hadn't wanted to go out at all, but Granny had insisted. "Go down to the checkpoint quickly now," she had said. "I heard the refugee trucks coming today and they're going to give out cooking oil. If you get there early, you'll have a better chance of getting some." "Can't Latif go?" I said, frowning at Latif, who'd broken a cardboard packing case open onto the dust-covered floor and was turning somersaults on it. "No, Habibti, he'll only get into trouble. Go on now, there's a good girl. The oil bottle's nearly empty. How can I cook? You want to eat, don't you? And take Ahmed with you. He's been pestering to go out since he woke up." So I picked Ahmed up and set off. He was a weight, I can tell you, 10 months old and hefty with it. I carried him on my hip, but I kept having to move him from one side to the other. The street was strewn with rubble, and I was wearing rubber flip-flops, so I had to pick my way through carefully to avoid the fresh splashes of broken glass. I can picture it clearly now, though at the time I hardly noticed all the mess around. There was twisted spikes of metal sticking up from the pavement. They had once been street lights. The gaping dark openings on each side of the road had been busy, crowded shops. The wooden stumps in the middle of the roundabout were all that remained of palm trees. All over the tarmac there were circles like you see on the water when you drop a pebble into a pond. They were where shell and mortar had fallen. The checkpoint wasn't far. I slowed down as I approached it. You had to be very cautious with checkpoints. You had to take care and look closely to make sure that the men guarding them were from a friendly militia. To tell you which militia that was running the checkpoint, each one had a little flag stuck up on a pole or one hanging across the chain that they used to stop the traffic going down the street. Sometimes there were posters too of the different political leaders. Our flags were green and black. There were 4 militiamen there that morning. They had built up 2 walls of sandbags on either side of the street and had run a chain across between them to stop vehicles going through. They all carried automatic weapons slung casually over their shoulders. They didn't frighten me though. I knew their flag was the right one for my sort of family. I recognised their accents too. They were from the same as mine. They came from the far south of Lebanon. They were Shia Muslims, like us. Even so, I could never be really relaxed around the militiamen. They had guns, after all, and were very used to using them. I never quite knew what they might do next. Some of them had seen so much fighting and killing, I wasn't sure if they knew when to stop. My heart sank when I came round the corner and saw the checkpoint, because the little truck that usually brought supplies in for refugee families wasn't there. I can remember standing awkwardly, not quite knowing what to do, pushing a stone around with the tip of one rubber sole. One of the militiamen had taken off his scarf and was retying it around his head. He saw me standing there feeling foolish and beckoned me across. Shyly, I went over to him. "Looking for someone?" he said. "The truck. My grandma said it was coming today, with cooking oil." One of the other men heard. "You'll be lucky. After last night's bombardment, they haven't cleared the roads yet. Tomorrow, inshallah. Come back tomorrow." The light glinted on the gun he was cradling in his arms. Ahmed saw it and reached out to touch it. I snatched his hand back, but the man laughed. Hey, little tiger, a fighter already? He put his gun down on the ground and reached out his arms. Here, give him to me. I didn't want to. How would I know what he might do with a baby in his arms? But Ahmad was struggling and reaching out. He wasn't scared at all. He wanted to pull at the militiaman's headscarf. Don't worry, sweetheart. He'll be fine with me. The man had taken Ahmad already and was holding him gently, expertly tickling his tummy. I relaxed a bit. I could see he was used to babies. Ahmad wriggled. He'd gone red in the face and was laughing so hard he was gasping. I love him. God save me, the man said. When I see him, I see my own son. He seemed quite sorry to hand him back to me. Come tomorrow and bring him with you. The truck's sure to be here then. You'll get your supplies, and I'll get some extra milk for him if I can. So I had to turn back then and go home. I'm on to chapter 4. Granny was cooking when I got back. She was squatting over a small kerosene stove she'd managed to get hold of, stirring a stew of chickpeas. I never thought about where our food came from. Somehow there always seemed to be something to eat. Now I realised that Granny must have performed miracles to keep us all fed. There were handouts from the refugee organisations, of course, but they were never really enough. Sometimes she used to leave Ahmed with me and tell me to keep an eye on Latif,